Hello, it is JAMR. It is your TA for Econ 2, excuse me, A. And today I'm going to be talking to you in a couple different videos about GDP and how important that is because we're going into macro as opposed to micro. So big stuff versus small stuff. You guys have been learning individual-based, company-based, business-based, demand and supply stuff. Now we're just like taking that and transplanting into the world at large. So the massive, supply and demand and that is the world market and the economies of different countries as opposed to different businesses and people. Now we're going to go to a lot of people, specifically GDP. And with that, I will share my screen to start talking about 21.1. Gross domestic product, and it's the one statistic to know. We begin with a quote from the president of Ghana from March 30th. We know what to do to bring our economy back to life. What we do not know how to do is to bring people back to life. Especially resonant now. Work better recollect. So we're going to talk about why gross domestic product is a useful statistic, how we define it, how we calculate it, and its limitations, because it's not perfect, like everything. So key question right now, how is the economy doing? How severe is the contraction? This isn't rhetorical. Pause the video if you feel like it. Answer this question for yourself. I'm sure we're all going to come up with the same answer, which is the economy is not doing as well as it could be, to put it lightly. I'm not going to get into it too much, but how severe is this contraction? Relatively severe. Anybody objectively can say that is true. But however, we're going to point out that it is significantly better than many people would have thought and did think months ago. Now, it's better now than a lot of people had thought. The GDP with gross domestic product, you can compare across time and space. No, across countries, not space. That'd be cool. Overall economic performance, you can compare the well-being of individuals. So that would be something we're narrowing down to people. It's called GDP per capita, which I'll talk about later. And the price levels of goods over time. There are some of the uses. It's going to link to a series of stories. Take your time to go through these if you want. But I'll leave that to you guys to do on your own time. And click the right one. There you go. So the definition of GDP from the macro book is the one that we're going to be sticking with. Gross domestic product is the market value of all final goods and services produced within a country in a given period of time. I'm going to go through this step by step with the book's definition and like the little box that they give you, the picture that they give you, just to make sure you guys have that hammered home. But this is what we're going to be working with for the definition. So the GDP is for any area. It can be for an area of any size, countries, states, continents, counties, but for the sake of simplicity and just to make sure you guys understand it very fairly quickly, we're going to use country instead of any area. We're going to zoom in on specifically, obviously, the United States because it's the most readily available GDP to analyze. Different flavors of GDP. There are several kinds of GDP. Aggregate, it's the whole economy, add everything up. Per capita, like I said, it's that of individuals. So it's per person, you divide the GDP by the population. The growth rate is aggregate versus the previous quarter of the year. So you're going to take a period of the year. We break it up into the unit. It's usually broken up into quarters. So there's 4 quarters in every year. You can take the GDP of a country in that quarter and compare it to the previous quarter to see growth between those 2 quarters, or you could even compare it to a quarter to the corresponding quarter in the previous year to see how much it has grown within a full year. So it's just aggregate versus period or quarter year, the aggregate of a specific time versus a previous time. And real nominal, which is adjusted for prices over time, are not real. It's adjusted. Nominal is not. The circular flow diagram. This will be important for you guys to know. It illustrates the flow of goods and services and money throughout the market. I'm going to go to the books one just to also guide you through the little box. But this would be a good thing to write down. If you want to pause it, write down the one that's in this slide. I'm going to switch over to the book. Share screen. Share screen. So the green arrows show that the flow of goods and services in one direction is matched by a flow of money in the opposite direction. So we're going to start at businesses. I'm pointing as if you can see my finger. I have a mouse. We're going to start at businesses. They sell an output into the market for outputs, which is corresponded by a market value of output going back to them. So the market value of the output that they provide into the market is then transferred back to them. When people buy it, So people from the household will spend on that market output that's provided by the business. The output is bought. They spend on the output. Then these two things on the top, the purple outputs on the top. So the spending on output and the market value for output, you can classify as essentially giving the same number. They are giving the same number in terms of GDP. You can count either one of those when you're adding up GDP, and you will come up with the same number. So businesses, outputs sold into the market outputs, they are bought by the households, they're bought output. The households spend on that output, which in turn is the market value of output provided back to the business. So households, they provide labor into the market for inputs. In turn, they receive an income after a business buys that input into the market for inputs. The wages and profits are essentially the same things that income received. They just label differently. The wages and profits are what goes into the market for inputs, and then the income received into the households is essentially, this is the same numbers, not essentially, it is the same as the wages and profits that are put into the market for inputs. So these two numbers, GDP, income received, GDP, wages and profits, are the same. These two numbers, spending on output, market value of output, are the same numbers. You can add up either one of these on the top, so either this one or this one on the top, or this one or this one on the bottom, into the GDP, and it'll be the same number. So hammer it home. This is the same as this number. This number is the same as this number. Moral of the story. I'm going to go back to sharing Adobe Acrobat Reader, which will soon become obsolete. Okay. Circular flow diagram. Pause. Write this down. And whichever is easiest for you. I use the one from the book. This is Professor Clark's, but this is an important concept that you should guys have readily available, because it'll make it so much easier when you're trying to track things through the market in terms of GDP. Click. So GDP is a measure of production. It's a measure of what a country produces. It's also a measure of what a country earns. Remember, it's not just going to be what, the output of an entire nation is going to be what they make off of selling, like not selling. It's just going to be what they make as well. So I'm going to talk later about how to calculate, how to add up GDP. And the most blatant example for earnage, it was going to be exports, except for, of course, in an import economy, it's not going to be positive. But remember, things that people make in a country are going to be added into GDP, and what they earn in the economy are going to be added into the GDP. So this is what it means. GDP identity for a country's entire economy: income equals expenditure equals output. No, I need to get into that in the next video. I went too far. I'm going to stop the video here and then come back with chapter 21.2 video. So sorry for that awkward ending, but I will see you guys in the next video.